Mr. President.
Senator from Texas.
Mr. President, I rise to speak for the generations of Americans who this body is irresponsibly drowning in debt. Now, to be clear, debt is a bipartisan problem. Debt is a problem both parties bear substantial responsibility for. To understand just how true that is, we need look back just 21 years. In the year 2000, when this century began, our national debt stood at roughly $5 trillion. Mr. President, I want you to pause and think about that. The year 2000 wasn't that long ago. $5 trillion is the total amount we owed. In 2001, George W. Bush became president. During the 8 years of Bush's presidency, the debt doubled from $5 trillion to $10 trillion. My party bears a significant degree of responsibility for that growth. Then in 2008, Barack Obama was elected president. And over the next 8 years, the debt doubled again from $10 trillion to $20 trillion. I want you to pause and reflect on that. The $5 trillion debt that we started the 21st century with had been accumulated by 42 presidents over 2 centuries. And then 2 presidents over 16 years, one a Republican and one a Democrat, took our debt and increased it by 300%, quadrupled the nation's debt in 16 years. As we stand here today, in 2021, some 9 months into the Joe Biden presidency, the debt is roughly $29 trillion. My home state, the great state of Texas, has roughly 29 million residents. That means the national debt is $1 million for every man, woman, and child in the state of Texas. That is reckless and irresponsible. Now, my Democratic colleagues point out that Republicans spent too much during the Trump presidency. I agree. Much of that spending I voted against. And I would note last year was an extraordinary year with a pandemic unlike anything any of us have ever seen in our lives. I wish Republicans had been better at exercising fiscal responsibility when we had control of the White House and both houses of Congress. The unfortunate reality in this body, though, is that when you have a multi-trillion-dollar spending bill, you can usually count on the votes of every single Democrat and about half the Republicans. And so on spending bill after spending bill, we see 75 to 80 senators coming together, usually all the Democrats and half the Republicans. And there are about 20 of us who try to say, why are we bankrupting our kids and grandkids? Why are we digging the hole deeper and deeper and deeper? But that is, at least right now, a minority view in this body. But the fact that my party bears significant responsibility for the debt we have today is not to draw an equivalency between what's happened in the past and what is happening right now. Because, Mr. President, what Senate Democrats, what House Democrats, and what President Biden are doing now has no precedent in our nation's history. It is an order of magnitude different. Senate Democrats, House Democrats, and President Biden, if the spending proposals they have put forth pass, within a 12-month period, they will have spent $9.5 trillion. One of the problems people have at home is understanding big numbers. a million, a billion, a trillion. They've all got an illion in them. It's hard to tell the difference. That just sounds like a lot of money. Well, let's put $9.5 trillion in context. $9.5 trillion is more than twice what the United States spent to win World War II. The entire course of the war, it cost us less than half of that to save the free world and defeat the Nazis. And Washington Democrats are trying to spend that in 12 months. It is wildly irresponsible. It is reckless. They are trying to accompany that with trillions of dollars of new taxes. If the Democrats get their way, every tax you can think of is going up. Individual income tax is going up. Corporate taxes are going up. Small business taxes are going up. Capital gains taxes are going up. The death tax is going up. Farmers are paying more in taxes. Ranchers are paying more in taxes. Small businesses are paying more in taxes. Working families are paying more in taxes. Joe Biden campaign promising no one who makes $400,000 a year or less will see their taxes go up. That statement was a flat-out falsehood. And by the way, look, I recognize Joe Biden and I are of a different party, so maybe you're inclined not to credit me with my assessment of the truth or falsity of President Biden's promise. Well, if you don't take my word for it, take the Joint Committee on Taxation's word for it that analyzed the Democrats' tax program and found for roughly 80% of Americans, taxes either stayed the same or go up. That it's cutting taxes for a very small portion of Americans. It's raising taxes on people with incomes as low as $40,000 a year. By the way, it's also worth noting, part of the Democratic talking points is that the deficit is driven by the 2017 tax cut. Those are good partisan talking points. Those will get a round of applause in any Democratic gathering. Although I say that with all candor, Mr. President, I haven't been to very many Democratic gatherings. But I feel confident that is accurate, that Democrats like, yes, too many tax cuts. Before you're inclined just to believe that political rhetoric, however, you might at least pause to look at the facts, to look at the numbers. And the facts and numbers show that after we passed the 2017 tax cuts, cutting taxes on working families across this country, that we saw record prosperity, we saw the lowest unemployment in 50 years, we saw the lowest African American unemployment ever recorded, we saw the lowest Hispanic unemployment ever recorded, and we saw federal tax revenues go up. So the next time you hear a Democrat say the debt comes from the tax cut, it just ain't so. The next year, the Treasury got more money in taxes than it had the year before. So the Democratic narrative about tax cuts driving the debt is, to borrow a term from the current president, malarkey. The debt that we are facing as a result of this wild spending spree is going up and up and up. And one of the consequences of that spending and that debt is we are seeing an inflation bomb going off in this country. Now, for younger Americans, inflation may not sound very real. Inflation's not something we've lived with in recent times. We've been in this sort of weird holiday from economic history, with inflation being very, very low. But Mr. President, you and I are both old enough to remember the 1970s. We're both old enough to remember double-digit inflation, 21% interest rates. Inflation is a cruel tax, and it's a tax on everybody, but it's particularly cruel on the most vulnerable. You know who gets hammered with inflation? Senior citizens. Seniors who spent their whole lives saving. And they suddenly see the values of their savings going down and down and down because Washington politicians are devaluing their money. Seniors who are on a fixed income get the same amount of money each month, but suddenly the cost of everything goes up. Right now today, all across this country, in Texas, in Virginia, and in every other state, prices are going up. The cost of gasoline has skyrocketed as a direct result of Joe Biden and the Democrats' policies. The cost of food is going up. The cost of rent is going up. The cost of lumber is going up. The cost of homes is going up. According to the chief economist at Moody's Analytics, for households earning the U.S. median annual income, which is about $70,000 a year, the current inflation rate has forced them to spend another $175 a month in food and fuel and housing. That works out to $2,100 a year. So each month, if your family is at the median income level in the United States, the Democrat inflation tax is about $175 a month. And that's before their massive tax rates kick in. And that's before this body passes the Bernie Sanders socialist budget.